The temperature is the same. But one day feels sharp, clear, and manageable, and another feels heavy, damp, and exhausting. Not colder on paper, just harder to tolerate. This difference isn't in your head. It's the difference between dry cold and damp cold. And your body reacts to them in very different ways. In damp conditions, cold doesn't feel crisp or clean. It feels like it seeps in, settles deeper, and refuses to leave. Even mild temperatures can suddenly feel uncomfortable, draining, and hard to escape. Moist air and heat loss. Why damp cold feels stronger. Damp cold feels worse, because moisture changes how heat leaves your body. In dry air, the thin layer of warm air around your skin stays relatively stable. Your body heats it, and it acts as a buffer between you and the cold environment. Moist air disrupts this balance. Water in the air conducts heat more efficiently than dry air. When the air around you is damp, warmth is pulled away from your body faster. The protective layer of warm air breaks down more easily and has to be constantly reheated. This creates a steady drain of heat. Not a sharp shock, but a continuous loss that your body struggles to keep up with. Even when you're dressed properly, warmth never fully settles. The cold feels heavier, slower, and more persistent. Damp air also clings to surfaces. It surrounds your body instead of moving past it. This makes the cold feel closer, more present, almost pressing against you. In dry cold, the air feels empty and distant. In damp cold, it feels dense and intrusive. Your skin senses this difference immediately. Blood vessels tighten sooner. Muscles subtly contract. The body shifts into conservation mode earlier than it would in dry conditions. You may not think it's freezing, but you feel uncomfortable much faster. This is why a damp day just above zero can feel worse than a much colder dry day. The temperature number hasn't changed much, but the way your body loses heat has. Clothes in damp cold. Why layers stop working? In damp cold, clothes behave differently. Layers that work perfectly in dry winter air suddenly feel less effective, even when you're wearing the same outfit. The problem isn't thickness, it's moisture. Clothing keeps you warm by trapping air. Each layer holds pockets of warm, dry air close to your body, slowing heat loss. But in damp conditions, moisture from the air begins to interfere with this system. Fabrics absorb humidity, even if they don't feel wet to the touch. Once that happens, the trapped air inside the layers becomes less insulating. Moist air conducts heat better than dry air. When your clothes are filled with humid air instead of dry air, warmth escapes more easily. The layers are still there, but they no longer slow heat loss the way they should. Your body keeps producing heat, but it leaks out faster than expected. This effect is especially noticeable with fabrics that already struggle with moisture. Once they absorb humidity, they lose structure. Air pockets collapse. The fabric sits closer to the skin, and insulation drops. You don't feel suddenly cold, you feel gradually drained. Another issue is evaporation. Even in winter, your body releases small amounts of moisture. In damp conditions, this moisture doesn't evaporate efficiently. It stays within your clothing, creating a cool, clammy sensation that amplifies heat loss. The cold starts to feel deeper, harder to shake off. This is why people often say damp cold gets into your clothes. It's not just a phrase. The insulating system breaks down from the inside. Layers stop working together, and warmth never fully builds. In dry cold, clothing helps your body stabilize. In damp cold, it constantly has to fight to keep up. And that's why the same outfit can feel completely inadequate. Skin and moisture. Why cold feels deeper and heavier. Damp cold doesn't just affect the air or your clothes. It changes how your skin experiences temperature. Even when you're not wet, moisture in the environment alters the way heat leaves your body at the surface level. Your skin is designed to regulate heat through constant exchange with the air around it. In dry conditions, this exchange is relatively predictable. The skin warms the surrounding air, and that warmth lingers long enough for your body to adjust. In damp conditions, that process breaks down. Moisture on the skin, even microscopic, increases heat transfer. Water conducts heat far more efficiently than air. When the air is humid, the thin layer between your skin and the environment becomes a better conductor of heat, not an insulator. Warmth is pulled away faster and more steadily. This creates a specific sensation people often describe as bone-deep cold. Not sharp or biting, but heavy and persistent. The cold doesn't feel like it's on the surface. It feels like it settles in and stays. Your body warms up briefly, then cools again, never quite reaching equilibrium. Another factor is evaporation. In damp air, sweat and moisture don't evaporate easily. Instead of cooling you quickly and then stopping, the moisture stays on the skin, maintaining a constant cooling effect. The body reads this as ongoing exposure, even when temperatures aren't extreme. The nervous system responds by tightening blood vessels near the skin. This reduces heat loss, but it also reduces warmth sensation. Skin feels colder, stiffer, less responsive. You may notice numb fingers, tight cheeks, or a general sense of heaviness. This is why damp cold feels harder to escape than dry cold. It's not dramatic. It's persistent. The skin never gets a break from heat loss, and the body stays in a quiet state of defense instead of comfort. Body response. Why damp cold feels exhausting. Damp cold doesn't just make you feel chilly. It makes you tired. Even short exposure can leave you feeling drained, heavy, and low on energy, as if the day took more out of you than it should have. This happens because your body is working constantly to maintain balance. In damp cold, heat is being pulled away faster and more persistently. To compensate, the nervous system stays active. Blood vessels tighten. Muscles remain slightly contracted. The body holds itself together instead of relaxing. This constant low-level effort costs energy. You may not notice it consciously, but your body does. Muscles that never fully relax use more fuel. The nervous system keeps scanning for changes instead of settling. Over time, this creates fatigue that feels physical, not mental. Posture often changes as well. Shoulders rise. The neck tightens. Movements become smaller and more contained. This shrinking posture reduces heat loss, but it also limits circulation and breathing depth. Less oxygen, less movement, more tension. All of it adds to the feeling of exhaustion. Damp cold also affects mood. Because the body never reaches a stable state of comfort, it doesn't switch into rest mode. Everything feels slightly harder. Walking, standing, even thinking can feel more effortful than usual. This isn't weakness, it's the body conserving resources. What makes this especially frustrating is that the fatigue doesn't match the temperature. It doesn't feel justified. You look at the weather and think, it's not that cold. But your body experienced something very different. In damp cold, the body spends more energy just staying functional. And when that happens, tiredness isn't a sign of laziness. It's a natural response to continuous, invisible stress on the system. Why dry cold feels easier to tolerate. Dry cold may look harsher on paper, but for the body it's often easier to handle. Even at lower temperatures, dry air allows warmth to behave in a more predictable way, and that predictability matters more than comfort illusions. In dry conditions, the layer of warm air around your skin is more stable. Once your body heats it, that warmth stays in place longer. Heat loss still happens, but it's slower and more controlled. Your body can adapt, find a balance, and then settle into it. Clothing also works better in dry cold. Air trapped inside layers stays dry, light, and insulating. Fabrics keep their structure. Air pockets don't collapse. The system holds together, allowing warmth to build instead of constantly leaking away. Dry cold feels cleaner because the body can respond once and move on. Blood vessels adjust, muscles adapt, posture settles. The nervous system doesn't need to stay on high alert. You may feel cold at first, but once adjusted, the sensation becomes manageable. Another important difference is movement. In dry cold, even light activity quickly generates warmth that stays with you. Walking, shifting weight, or simply standing in the sun can make a noticeable difference. In damp cold, that warmth disappears almost immediately. This is why people often say they prefer -10 degrees Celsius dry cold over +2 degrees Celsius damp cold. It's not about toughness. It's about how the body experiences heat loss. Dry cold allows warmth to exist. Damp cold constantly takes it away. When cold is dry, the body feels capable. When cold is damp, the body feels under pressure. And that difference explains why the same temperature can feel either tolerable or deeply uncomfortable.